Recently, I was talking to a friend of mine who told me that his neighborhood was going to be demolished and cleared by developers. As soon as he told me that, I knew I had to go over to his property as soon as I can to see if there was any wildlife to rescue from the up-and-coming destruction. You won't believe what I found. But first, welcome to another episode of The Ant Keeper, where I upload every week about all things ants related. If you find yourself enjoying this video, then subscribe and join the AK Colony. Your support really helps me out and I really appreciate it. A couple of weeks ago, I was chatting with a friend of mine who said his place was going to be cleared by developers to make way for new high-density housing. And you know what? I wasn't surprised, because this is something that's quite common in my area, with many blocks being developed in the last couple of years. I've seen it over and over again, dense bushland reduced to nothing, a cleared, flat landscape in just a couple of weeks. With my friend's permission, we get to explore his 5-acre block and rescue any colonies we find. Given that this development encompasses a 200-acre area, some of which has already been cleared, I have no idea what we'd find. First, I surveyed the block and discovered that there was actually just 2 ant species inhabiting this bushy block. In the rear, mostly untouched 3 acres, there were hundreds of colonies of Phytolii. I had come prepared to save whatever I could find. However, I am not equipped to excavate and transport tens, if not hundreds of thousands of worker ants. That said, I think of all of the fauna on this block, the Phytolii colonies will probably manage the best, being shifted around and separated until the larger diggers take them to a new block to repopulate once again. After getting acquainted with the local Phytolii colonies, I said my goodbyes and kept on the search for anything else to rescue. I was surprised that there really wasn't much around. Maybe from the clearing just meters away, the noises and vibrations may have scared the wildlife off to a safer, more inland block. After about an hour of searching, I stumbled across something I totally was not expecting. Across from the condemned house to be demolished, I discovered a small fruit tree bearing a unique leaf-bound nest. This wonderfully created nest of carefully stitched together leaves are home to the beautifully coloured Polyrhacus australis, a species of jet black glossy ants that cannot be compared to any other ants I've seen. Unfortunately, I was not as prepared as I hoped, realising I somehow forgotten to bring Fluon to help me capture this colony. To put the pressure on, I was desperately running out of time and needed to leave an hour ago. Thinking on my feet, I remembered oil can be used as an escape-proof barrier. I quickly ran to my ute and smeared a touch of motor oil around the edge of this old coffee glass. Gleefully, I can say it worked a treat. With a bit of fiddling around and gathering up as many workers as possible, I was able to capture this colony and take them home. Fast forward till now, it's been 3 weeks since I first secured this colony. I decided to wait before showing you them in case they didn't adapt to the move and slowly die off, which can happen to any colony put under stressful conditions, especially a huge move like this. AK Colony, it's time to share with you what this colony has been up to. Like many of our other colonies, I moved them into one of my outworlds and connected an Oz Ants acrylic nest. Interestingly, they continued living inside the leaf nest for about 2 weeks, until the leaves began to die off. During this time, they had only used the Oz Ants nest as a dumping ground to place a few of their dead workers. What's most interesting is that now that the leaves have died off, they have collectively chosen to remain in the ruins of their old home, exposed to the light, rather than finally moving into this piece of real estate. Perhaps the pheromone trails that cover up the decayed leaves still remain, and give the ants that peaceful feeling of home. Regardless, I want to be prepared and still offer them this nest in case they want to live somewhere more private. AK Colony, I wanted to ask you, how do you think we should house this colony? Do you have any ideas? I'm thinking we have a couple of options. We could just leave them how they are for now, helping them settle down into this home until they outgrow it in the next 6 months or so. Or we could put them in a big glass tank where we could encourage them to move into a living citrus plant, or maybe nest inside something else. Until the time when we move them, we can gladly accept this colony into our collection, and together we can watch them thrive into an even bigger colony. In one of my most recent videos, I share with you a colony of Camponotus concentrinus that I've never really shown off before. I had bought this queen a few months back alongside the purchase of a couple of other ants that were featured in a video. She arrived with 3 workers and a small pile of brood. At the time, I was trialing the use of heat mats versus heat cords and was interested to see how much faster a colony would grow under the ideal conditions of temperature and humidity. As you could expect, the colony had done exceptionally well in their test tube setup after about 2 months straight on heat. I then moved them into this old outworld to populate and left them alone for a few months, only interrupting them to feed them every couple of days. As with most colonies, they eventually had a population explosion and now are set to have another one within a month or so. With the colony storing many of the brood outside in the outworld, it's clear they need a bigger home urgently. This is the dilemma I've been considering. Notice this colony has dirt in the outworld, contrasting to the rest of the colonies that have sand. The reason for that is it's much easier to film ants on a flat surface, whereas the dirt is just a nightmare to record on. But that didn't matter because this colony was just an experiment for my own knowledge. But now they're big enough and that I've shared their existence with the AK colony, it's time to move them into a setup like the others in our collection to inhabit. This move will be unlike most other nest upgrades, because the outworld has passed its use-by date and needs to be replaced too. Over time, the edges have begun to warp and create small gaps for workers to carefully fit through and escape. This means we have to replace both the nest and the outworld. To do this as stress-free for the colony as possible, I'm going to first block the entrance of the test tube with cotton, then by hand pick out all the scurrying workers and soldiers into their new home. Next will be the time to remove the test tube and place that in the outworld. Now this colony is nocturnal and not used to being in the light, so I expect this abrupt photosensitive disruption to motivate the colony to search for somewhere dark quite rapidly. Lastly will be the task to remove any brood that may be remaining in the outworld and carefully place it near the entrance of the new nest. What a contrast this species is from the other colony in this video. The bright orange and deep black on these ants is awesome to stop and admire. It's not a surprise why the Camponotus genus is a favourite amongst many ant keepers around the world. Plus the sheer size of the soldiers must make the workers feel secure. Personally, I love admiring the muscular shape of the heads these tough looking brutes have. I wonder how long this nest will last before they need to upgrade again to a new home. Hopefully another 6 months at least. If you made it this far, then make sure to hit the like button if you enjoyed this video. It really helps me out. Also, have you subscribed and become part of the AK colony? If you haven't, then what are you waiting for? Subscribe and be a part of one of the fastest growing colonies here on YouTube. I'd like to know from you, how do you think we should house this colony of Polyrhacus australis? Let me know in the comment section below. Thank you everyone for watching this week's episode. I'll see you on the next one. Until then, ant keepers unite.